Hey, what's going on everybody? Harry here, and today I've got a pretty cool video for you. We're gonna actually take a look at a recent analysis that I did of a full week of driving. So we posted an article over here on the blog titled "How Much Money Can an Uber and Lyft Driver Make in 2017?" And basically this is sort of the ultimate guide to earnings and really breaking down how much you can make that I wrote. And it's about 5,000 words, so it is quite long, but there are some good resources in here, and I definitely recommend for anyone who's interested. I'll leave a link in the show notes. You guys can go ahead and check that out. But one of the things I want to go over in this video right now is basically this spreadsheet that I ended up using to actually calculate a lot of my earnings. So this is sort of the final product right here, and you can focus kind of right here on this area, 20% commission, and basically you can see the nights that I drove: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the number of rides, and really just a whole bunch of really good information as far as earnings. We also looked at miles and sort of calculated the expenses. So obviously you need to think about how much you're making, but also how much you're spending. And we even looked at taxes too. So super extensive information, and I sort of laid it all out in this post for you guys. So if you want to go ahead and take a look at that, you definitely can. But if you're interested in recreating something similar on your own, then this tutorial, this video, and this spreadsheet is going to help you, because I do have a blank template that I'm going to give you guys so that you could actually create something similar. Now, what you'll actually want to do is, this is where a lot of the calculations get done, and you can see here that, so this is for March 8th driving data, and this is March 8th per mile calculations. So that's going to be the expense side. And really, if you're driving for Uber or Lyft, you can do both in this spreadsheet, but really each session of driving sort of needs its own set of two tabs. So you can sort of see right here that this was one session of driving, this March 8th. So that was sort of one session, and then I come here and make two tabs. So that's what I'm going to show you guys how to do today. So hopefully you'll learn a lot, and if you want to go ahead and recreate this video is going to help you. So what you're going to need to do, if you guys are in this spreadsheet, you can see here that I have a template right here, and that's going to pop you over right here to a blank template sheet. Now, I left instructions right here, but you're also, if you're watching this video, obviously you can follow along here too. So basically all I say here is, in order to use this spreadsheet, you'll need to track three things: the time of the request, the arrival time that you get to your passenger, and the time of the ride completion, right? So what I did is I basically went out with a little notebook while I was driving, tracked those three things, and then you also need to track your total miles driven for the night. So if you guys use one of the mileage tracking apps that we recommend, like a Stride Drive or a QuickBooks Self-Employed, that part will be no problem. Really, the only area that's a little bit of work is tracking all that stuff, right? So as soon as I get a request, I write the time down. As soon as I arrive at the passenger's destination, or sorry, at the passenger's pickup location, I write that time down, and then I also write the time down of the ride completion. Uber and Lyft give you some of this data, but as you'll see that their clock sometimes is a little off and you need a little bit more. So we sort of assume that any breaks you might take, or if it takes a few minutes for the rider to come outside, that actually is basically assumed to be negligible or zero. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Now really, for the input side, you will need some ride data for your Uber and Lyft dashboard, right? So here, let's get started, and I'll show you guys what we're going to do here. So if I'm following along step 3, and then we move to step 4, add 2 new sheets, and then copy and paste the template driving data and the template per mile calc sheet into the respective new sheets. So that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So to add a new sheet, you're just going to go down here, add a sheet, and then that creates 1, and then we're going to create 2, and we go back to the directions. What does it say? Rename the new tabs XXX driving data, and that's not I just realized what I named that XXX. I guess you could take that the wrong way, but I'm not taking it that way. And then we go right here, YYY per mile calcs, and you'll see why I'm going to do this. Basically rename this sheet, double click, boom, and then what do the directions say, right? Rename the new tabs, and also we need to add 2 new sheets and then copy and paste, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this whole, and you go Command A to select everything, Control C, and then that basically, you can also go edit, copy, do the same thing as Control C. And then when I go over here to XXX driving data, I go into cell A1, Control V or edit, copy, or edit and paste. And then you can see now that it's going to go ahead and paste everything. So now we have basically that exact same template right here in here. Okay. And then we do the same thing for this one. So I'll select here, select all, copy, go to YYY, paste. And sometimes it takes a second, and there we go. So we've got that step down, and now on the XXX driving data sheet, it says modify the purple cells so that they link to YYY, right? So all that means is I have a little legend right here, right? So this purple, I think that's purple, needs to be updated or linked to another tab, right? So we're just going to go into all these purple cells, and you can see right here that it's linking to template, but we want that to link to YYY. Right, so I'm just going to come in here, change that, and this is all you have to do, YYY, boom. And you can see now that it's going to go and link to that, no problem. And so we'll go here, do the same thing, YYY, boom, all the purple ones, right? And what this is essentially doing is basically linking to that YYY sheet, right? All right, so we got all those changed. Perfect. Now, let's go back to the directions, and we did that right on the XXX driving sheet, modify the purple cells. Now we need to go ahead and do the same thing on the YYY sheet to link it to that XXX. So find the legend, right? You can see I tried to make it pretty easy right here. Highlight XXX, right? And remember that's going to link to that. And then do the same thing here. XXX. And then a couple more times, XXX, oh, one too many X's. And then on this one, a little trickier, you got to do it twice. One right there, and then one right there. Boom, now these two sheets are linked, right? So perfect. So what we do now, so we did instruction number 7. Now we're going to go to instruction number 8, right? On the XXX driving data sheet, enter your total mileage from when you left your house until you returned for the night. So I've actually already completed this. I'm still going to walk you through this, but basically we're going to do my March 8th driving data. So you come here. So I drove 80.9 miles on this day. So all we're going to do is follow the instructions and enter it right there. You can see input cells are this sort of light blue color, 80.9. Very simple. And you can see it's already starting to update. And you can also see that since we linked it over here, it's going to take that number and bring it in over here to calculate some things. So you can see right there the rideshare miles. It just brought that number in, right? Now, we typed in our total miles for that night, okay? And so that's going to be, I typed in from when I left my house until I returned for the night. Now, step 9, on the XXX driving data sheet, enter the Uber Lyft commissions and booking service fees for your city. So this is important because I'm actually at 20% since I've been driving for a very long time, a few years. And so I'm at 20%. So if you're at 25, you will need to change this. And then so I left little inputs right there. And then also depending on your city, I'm in Los Angeles. So the booking fee in March of 2017 right now is $185 for both Uber and Lyft. So you could change that if you need be. Obviously that's important. And then now we're going to actually enter some of this data. So on the XXX driving data sheet, enter in your ride data that you tracked and Uber and Lyft's earning numbers. So what that means is, I'll show you right here, is basically we're going to go ahead in and you can see that I've already actually entered it right here. And this is all the data. So on this night, you can see that I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rides, 7 on Uber, 1 on Lyft. And basically this request time, this arrival time, this end time, right? That's all the data. This is what I tracked on my own, right? So this is the data you need to track. So if I just go ahead and copy this into this new template, right? You guys are going to be entering this in right here. Boom. So you can see that it starts to fill some stuff out, right? Now, you can see also, though, that this is blue input cell, right? So we did all those inputs. Now, orange are going to be input cells from Uber or Lyft, right? So this is going to be data that you need to enter, right? So I'm going to come right here, and you can see I'll share this right here where you can see, so these are all my rides from Uber. and hopefully that's big enough, but you can see the UberX, and you can see the duration and distance and total. And really though, all we need to enter is going to be the mileage and the pay, right? So you can see that I've already done this over here on this sheet. So let's check to make sure it lines up, right? On this first trip of the night, 3.99 miles, and then 503 payout. You can see that it lines up right over here for all of these numbers. And then down at the bottom for Lyft, I only did one ride for Lyft on this night, but same information, 4.1 and $7.18. Sometimes the Uber and Lyft clock is off, so I don't really like to use their timing. So definitely keep that in mind. And when you guys are entering the time into the spreadsheet, you can see that you sort of have to do it in military time. So basically you have to type in 2015 like that. And that's the best way to make sure that you that the spreadsheet calculates and all that good stuff. So I'm just going to copy this because this is what you would need to enter since I already have done it. I'll go ahead and copy it right here. Boom. And now you can see that we're starting to calculate, and this spreadsheet basically goes through and calculates everything. Okay, so now that we have that all calculated, let's go back to the directions sheet, make sure that we got everything done. There's a couple last steps that we need to do. So number 11 is on the XXX driving data sheet, enter time for drive time to home. So this is basically saying when you end your last trip of the night, how long did it take you to get home? Because obviously that's sort of time and miles that you need to consider. And if we look over here, I entered 40 minutes. So on this night, I was pretty far away from home. And you can see over here that I actually set this up so that it'll highlight on your last trip of the night input cell, right? So now you know, remember that wasn't there before. If you look over here at template driving data, this knows, this, I guess that's kind of smart. It knows that once you do that, you got to enter in 040, and then you can see that now it shows that drive time to home. So let's head over to the direction sheet on the YYY per mile calc sheet. Last one, enter the blue inputs. So what this is basically saying is these light blue inputs, for me, these have already been filled out, but for you guys, you'll actually want to change this. What we did here is basically say that we took the Kelley Blue Book value, right, of my vehicle today, right, with 150,000 miles. Then we looked at the Kelley Blue Book value after we put 50,000 miles on the car, and you can see, so right here, Kelley Blue Book says that it's worth $5,134, so I input that number right there, and then you can see that once it's got a few more years on the car, it's obviously going to be only worth $4,335. And so that's just a good quick estimate to see sort of your depreciation. Just, you know, there's better ways of doing it, but this is a pretty quick and easy. So you can see that it says with 200,000 miles, 4,335. And so now we enter that difference right here, or this will actually calculate the difference for you because it subtracts this from that. And then you get a per mile cost. We also used a AAA maintenance estimate. So these are technically, you could fill these in on your own, or you can just use the maintenance estimate that we put in, the AA tire estimate. I input here, though, my per gallon cost. It's about $2.75 for me to fill up right now with middle grade, because that's what I use on my car. And then super important, obviously, is the MPG. My car doesn't get great gas mileage, but not terrible. So it's 23 miles per gallon. And you can see that it's basically adding all this stuff up to get a total. Also, obviously, rideshare insurance is important, so we added a daily insurance cost. So basically what we said was that it's $206 extra, right? For a personal policy, you're going to have that no matter what, so we don't count that as a cost. If you go out and get rideshare insurance, though, that's an additional cost for us. It was $206. We assumed, because for this estimate that we're working 4 out of the 7 days a week, and when you divide all that up, you get 99 cents per day. So that number may be about something like that for you, or you can go ahead and change it. And then we also input the federal mileage reimbursement of 53.5 cents. and some tax brackets. You guys can probably leave all these tax brackets the same. If you're in a higher tax bracket, you may want to change it, but other than that, that's pretty much what this spreadsheet is saying. Now, let's go ahead and look at the results, because I think that's the pretty cool part too, right? So we input these miles driven, and look, what this spreadsheet actually does is calculate your miles with a passenger, your miles without a passenger, which is pretty cool. And basically what that says is what your paid drive time is going to be. So if you come over here, you look 54.79%, that's basically saying that's that 44.67 divided by 80.9. And that's saying that how much percentage of the time you have a passenger in your car getting paid, right? And you can see that that's super important. If we go over here to my summary, where I actually have 4 days worth of data, you can see that in this paid drive time, when I got all the way up to 70%, that had a huge impact on my earnings. I made $27.48 per hour after expenses, right? Or $33 an hour before expenses, which is great, a lot of money. So that's definitely, that number is important. And you can also see that this total cost per mile comes from the per mile calculation sheet, right? And basically what that is doing is saying that depending on the miles you're driving, how much it's costing you per mile. So that's obviously going to be important. And then you can come back right here and this will get calculated into everything. There's also some efficiency statistics right here. So this talks about my total drive time to passenger. What's highlighted though, or what's bolded, the average drive time to your passenger, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Not great, not bad. That's saying that from the time you get a request, right, basically your ETA, what's your average ETA? The lower that is, the shorter your ETAs are. And this is important because obviously you can ignore trips now on Uber. So if you're getting high ETA requests and it's super busy, you might want to ignore those in favor of lower ETA requests. Average downtime is basically the statistic that says, after you complete a ride, how long is it until you get a new request? If it's super busy out, that's going to be pretty low. You can't if you go out on a Tuesday afternoon, you can't do a whole lot about your average downtime. It may go up, but this is when it becomes important to know the hotspots in your cities, bars, restaurants, whatever, wherever you're most likely to get pickups. Because if you're finding that you're having really high average downtimes on the weekdays, for example, you got to really work hard to go find those concerts, those events, sporting things that happen during the week. We talked about the paid drive time. Now let's get to the exciting stuff, the pay, right? So my total base pay here was $54.60 for this night. You can see my average fare was $6.83, which is not bad, not great. And then we come over here and look at the commission. So this is really what the median commission, because obviously when you include things like that booking fee, that's why it's important to talk about the booking fee, because although Uber takes 25% commission, when you include the booking fee, that commission actually goes up. On this night, it was closer to 43%, which is obviously a lot of money. And then over here, when you look at earnings, this is what everyone cares about. Obviously, my gross pay per hour was $17.43. And then I also calculated, right? So this after expenses pay per hour, that takes into account your total cost per mile and the miles you drove, right? If you made, let's say $55, but you drove 200 miles, your profit isn't going to be very high, right? On this night, I made $54, drove 81 miles. When you multiply that by the 21 cents per mile, you actually get the pay after expenses. So what I'm really taking home is that $37, right? And if you calculate that after expense pay per hour, it's $11.81, which is not a ton of money, right? It's only a couple dollars above minimum wage here in California. So that's why it's so important to understand your expenses, understand your income, because then you can come over here and look at our summary and you'll see that, hey, even though on that Wednesday night, I may have only been able to make that $11.81, when I went all the way up to Saturday night after expenses, I was actually $27.48 per hour. And then you can come in here and look at these metrics. So hopefully this makes a lot of sense. Hopefully you guys now understand how to use this template. If you're looking to do a similar analysis, let's say you wanted to add another night, we can now rename this. Let's say we'll call this 3-8, and this won't mess anything up. We'll rename this to 3-8. And, so then that way, basically we have, let's see, get that out of the way. And now that way we have that 3.8 data. So if we wanted to add 3.9, for example, we would basically go through that whole process again of creating new sheets, copying over the templates, and then we would be able to get data for each. You can use a summary table, sort of like what I did here, but you'd have to create that on your own. It's not too hard. Basically, you'd create a new sheet and then link up the cells that you're interested in, or you can just try and use my sheet. So hopefully that made a lot of sense to you guys. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out in the comments below. I know this was a little bit of a longer video, but hopefully this walkthrough really helped you guys, and you're going to be able to understand your earnings, be able to use this sheet going forward, and really get some great data, because as you guys can see from that summary, there's a ton of interesting stuff that you can do and a ton that I learned. Definitely recommend that you go over here and read this post that I wrote, how much money can an Uber and Lyft driver make in 2017, because I really carefully analyzed. You can see all the stuff that I analyzed, everything about when to drive. Each single night that I was driving, I was testing a new app called Maestro, how much money I was making, getting more tips, the commission, if you're at 20 versus 25%, I showed how that would impact it, of course, the vehicle costs, and then taxes. I know taxes are a big question for people, and of course, how you can use this spreadsheet. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of this, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe to this channel. Look forward to hearing from you. Take care.